Let's go to my last example here. I referred to this before as the most egregious example of
Mm,
mistranslation. And this isn't even mistranslation. Mistranslation implies it's a mistake. But this is very clearly intentional.
yes.
Normally, I like to try to find the most charitable way to explain something like this. But there's no other way to see this one other than to be intentional. So we'll go to Colossians chapter 1, verse 16. And in the New World Translation, it reads this. Because by means of him, and that's a really awkward translation, by means of him. I'm sorry. Because by means of him, all other things were created in the heavens and on the earth, the things visible and the things invisible, whether they are thrones or lordships, governments or authorities. All other things have been created through him and for him. Also, he is before all other things, and by means of him, all other things were made to exist. Now, as I was reading that, I was emphasizing the word other things because of the view of the new world, because of the view of Jehovah Witnesses and the deity of Christ, this passage is a threat. Because if you read this in a good translation, the word other is not there. In
Mm.
fact, in Greek, the word other is not there. So this is just straight up adding something into the text to make it say something that is not there, just plain and simple. So Dyrral, do you have any thoughts on the usage of first of Colossians 1, 6, 16 and 17?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because the whole point here is to try and the previous verse, verse 15 says, He is the image of the invisible God. And the idea of image here is a physical representation of something that's invisible, right? God is invisible. Christ has made him visible. This is a little bit like what John says in John 1, the word has made clear, has expounded, if you like, the God who cannot be seen. So this is really, again, this is trying to then stand on the back of that and say, okay, let me tell you why that's the case. Because by means of him, if we take the New World Translation's rendering of
Yeah.
of Tonia, which is actually not wrong. It's
Mhm.
overly verbose to try and minimize the work of Christ here, I think.
Yeah.
But there's this you just cannot. So tapanta, which is the wording here for all
All
things.
things.
This is. I mean, we could find a dozen other places in the New Testament where we find this exact construction where they don't insert the word other. It's not uncommon, right? So they've just again selected this in here, and the thing is that the context is wildly against them. Um, if Christ was the means by which all things were created, that necessarily makes him outside of all things. So you have to insert all other things to actually make this even work. And the problem with that is that the following words, in the heavens and upon the earth, this is what's called a merism. A merism is basically a way of putting two things that are opposite together so that they say pretty much everything. So all
Mhm.
things that are creative have been created on the heavens or on the earth. That's everything, right? But he
Yeah.
doesn't stop there. He gives you another merism, the things visible and the things invisible. Well, again, everything created is either visible or invisible. It's another merism. It's like day and night, or in season and out of season. These are
Hmm.
more merisms. And so these merisms are there to try and include everything. The doubling up of them was the emphasis on that to make that even
Hmm.
clearer. And not only that, but then he goes on to explicitly include things that to a first century reader might be considered to be excluded, whether thrones, whether dominions, whether rulers, whether authorities, because those things are outside of God's created power, right? Those things are the corrupted things, according to the first century thinker. And so he's saying, no, all things were created through him
Right.
and for
Right.
him.
That's
So yeah.
interesting about the merisms. I'd not heard that before. But
Mm.
yeah, the day and night and yeah, that's cool. I'm gonna stow that away and probably use that in a sermon at some point. That's really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
But it makes it
Uh
such a powerful passage, right? Because it makes
yeah.
it so clear. All things, not all other things, all things. And we've got
Yep.
all these things that just pile up then to sort of say all these things and those things, these things and those things. Whatever you're thinking of, yes, that's included here. That's the point.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
that,
not only was it created through him, like in that last piece of verse 16 there, but it was also created for him.
yes. Yeah. Well, what's really interesting here in verse 16. So the world, you can't see this because I'm recording it on my screen. But the New World Translation has this kind of like study Bible thing. And there's a footnote there where it
Mm.
says the things visible and the things invisible. And that footnote actually refers back to John 1:3. All things came into existence through him, and apart from him, not even one thing came into existence. Um, so you can see the conflation of ideas here.
John
Uh,
1:3, they've actually taken a for John 1:3, they've actually added or taken the location of the paragraph or the period in verse 3, and then they've
yes,
split it so that it sort of crosses into verse 4. So, it really should say all things came into existence through him, and apart from him, not one thing that has come into existence that has come into
that's
existence.
right.
And so they've split that out because then that helps to qualify the next piece for them in verse 4.
Right. Yeah, I think there is some question there about the punctuation, if I recall. Now I'm just
Sure.
remembering stuff that I looked at ages ago. It's all things were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. Anything that made that was made would be if it was a single sentence. But then the way that it punctuates the passage brings us into the next verse. And instead of saying in him was life, it says that which came into him was life.
Yeah,
And
that
it
which came
gives
about through him. Yeah, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and that gives us the impression that well, Jesus didn't exist before, and then life came into him at this point, which,
Yeah.
as we know, right, he was in the beginning was the Word, and verse 14 down, the Word was, or the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. One more quick thing. And
Mm.
we're just about done. This may be like a little bonus topic here. Since we're at Colossians 1. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. Now, this is an interesting discussion about the use of the genitive case. Dyrral, you're probably aware of where I'm going with this. I didn't send you any notes on this one, so surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise. But some translations translate this as the firstborn over all creation. And that has to do with the specific form of the word creation in Greek. We call that the genitive form. So, can you tell us why some translations, and this isn't just a New World Translation thing, I think this is in many of our modern English Bibles, it could be either of or over. So, why is that? Why is that the case?
Yeah. So the genitive case is a case that is used typically to provide further descriptions. Now, in English, we normally translate it using the word of. The problem with the English word of is that it's really broad in its
Mm,
meaning. And so some translators in various places, not just here, but in other places as well, try to drop the word of and be a little bit more explicit about what they believe the text underneath is meaning. And this is one of the reasons why uh, translations are inherently commentaries in a sense, because that word, over is not there in the text. There's no preposition there either, but it is an attempt that translators are using to make clear what he is firstborn over. The problem with this, I think, is that the idea of firstborn here comes up twice, right? It comes up in this sense with relation to creation as a whole, and then it comes up later on with relationship to resurrection from the dead.
that's
Now,
right.
I think the idea of firstborn has this idea of both preeminence and order. And I
Mhm.
think both of these ideas tend to go together. Now, it's not always just order. Like, for instance, we saw that Jacob became the firstborn, even though he was born second. So
Right.
that's referring really to his priority in terms of the inheritance and so on. But
Yeah.
but the ideas tend to stay together, and they can be separated. And when they are separated, it tends to that idea of priority. So here, the firstborn from of all creation or overall creation. I don't have a problem with putting over there. It's not a big issue, I don't think. But again, you want to just bear in mind what that word prototokos means. Firstborn
That's right.
means that place of priority, and the whole point of verse 16 and following is to demonstrate why that is. right? Because he's the creator. He's the one through whom and for whom all things came into being. And
That's
so
right.
that's why he is the priority. That's why he is the firstborn. That's why he has that preeminence. And that's what the whole book of Colossians is about, which is a great book.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, Dr. Burling, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I think you've given me about an hour here. I know time is a valuable thing, so I really appreciate you. Did you want to say anything last? Did you want to say any last things to my audience before we go about our ways?
Yeah, I mean, what we've been through today, a lot of the stuff is, well, there's varying degrees of difficulty to it. Some of these things are results of deeper studies that I've done. A lot of it's just there for basic Greek though. So if you're interested in learning Greek, my encouragement would be to check us out, bma.to/get started. And if you want to sort of just start learning how to pronounce Greek like no, let's not do that. And if you're sort of thinking about I do have another one actually. Lately, I've been working on writing a book designed for people who have got no experience with Greek whatsoever, to sort of give you an idea of what it's like to learn Greek, what the benefits are, the history of Greek, why it's so significant. If you're interested in starting on that, jump in and download one of the chapters for free at bma.to/Greek benefits. It's I think a 9 or 10 page PDF, which gives you one of the chapters of that book for free. So get into it and see how you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Burling, and brothers and sisters. Until next time, we'll see you around.